There you are, Jeff Arnold.
Thanks, Michael. So good morning. Appreciate everybody being here today. As Michael said, Discovery's been a partner with EG since the beginning, and so we thought today would be a great opportunity for us to showcase for you a project that we're working on called the Curiosity Project. It's very much a work in progress. You're the first people to see it. I'd say 99% of the people that we work with haven't seen this yet. It's going to launch in about 45 days, and so we were hoping that we could not only just preview this to you today, but also kind of inspire you to be a part of it, and more importantly, to get your ideas of how we can make it better and see if we can connect and kind of bring what this auditorium brings to everybody here that gets to experience it to the rest of the world on the web. So with that, I thought I'd do a little intro video that kind of inspires us every day.
I've always wondered why physicists, who've always been so happy and excited when they come up with a start date for the universe, the time of the Big Bang at 13.5 billion years ago, why they're happy with that. Because it just begs the question, what was before that?
Can you actually be addicted to love?
Can people really live in space?
What the heck happens after we die?
Can we actually observe evolution in action?
Why do babies squirm so much?
What is superstring theory? No, seriously, what is superstring theory?
How do we form memories?
How easy is germ?
Why do people cry?
Why do we germ?
What defines art?
Can we live
What
in
is
so
it?
why do we consider
Homo
war
sapiens?
What
not
is beauty?
What is
democracy work?
We've seen the destruction that's not even
What is it?
but what is curiosity?
So what is the Curiosity Project? The Curiosity Project, as Michael mentioned, is going to be one of the largest endeavors that Discovery Channel has ever taken on. Similar to Planet Earth and Life, it'll be a global television event. It'll be rolled out in schools all across the country. But what's going to be different this time is we've added two new elements to it. One is we've built a beautiful physical location to do in-person retreats in Colorado, where we're going to have retreats on everything from what is happiness to what is curiosity. And we've also, for the first time, really designed the project with the web in mind first. Meaning, once again, how do we really start to create formats on the web that we can become world-class storytellers? And I use the term internally of almost like a breathing time capsule, something that we constantly add to that inspires people to inform and inspires people to learn. So that the way the site is architected is that we basically looked at it from many different angles. And to back up for a second, the way that I got involved in the site was I was at the Discovery Channel Christmas party about 1.5 years ago, and the CEO of Discovery came up to me and said, "We're launching the Curiosity Project, which is the brainchild of our founder, John Hendricks, and would you work on the website?" And I think looking back at it now, it must have been a heck of a Christmas party, because I wasn't sure after I said yes if I was truly qualified to try to assemble all these curious people in one world or in one space on the web. And so I had to kind of go back to a playbook that I used at WebMD, How Stuff Works, ShareCare, which are the three things that I kind of know how to do, which to make a successful website is, what's the name, what's the face, and what's the big idea. And so for the name, kind of realizing that the mission of Discovery Channel is to satisfy curiosity, it was pretty evident to me that the name needed to be curiosity.com. But I'm sure, like many of you, you've experienced squatters before on the web that kind of sit on these names. And I remember when we were starting WebMD back in 1998, the name was WebMD, which stood for Webmaster Developers. And I had to find a guy that could go out there and recruit these, get these names from these squatters. And what's kind of funny is that these squatters kind of get into your head that if they know who you are, they're going to raise the price of us trying to buy that domain name. So they put this sense of fear into you. So I found this guy in Atlanta, Georgia, who runs a barbecue restaurant that, instead of catering barbecue, negotiates to buy with squatters' names. And so he was successful in 1998 in getting WebMD for $5,000. So we put him loose out to get Curiosity. And thank goodness he got it for us. So if you ever need a good guy to buy a URL name, I got a guy in Atlanta, Georgia, who does that on the side. So we kind of checked the first box of kind of my playbook, which was what's the name for the website that people are going to remember. Then we went to kind of page 2, which is who's the face. And I knew I had to find somebody that was more curious than myself. And I was at an event about 6 months ago, and I got introduced to Richard Sergey, who I'm sure many of you all know. And Richard came up to me, and we started talking. I had not met him before, but I knew about him and knew that he was with ABC News for over 28 years, and he was carrying his iPad with him. And so he said, Jeff, what are you working on now? And I said, I'm working on this new website that we just launched in October with Dr. Oz and Oprah called ShareCare. So he pulls out his iPad right there at the event. There was a couple hundred people there. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, this guy must be really curious. So he types in the name, and he looks at me, and he goes, well, which site is it? And so I'm thinking, well, it's ShareCare. It should be right there. And I lean over his shoulder, and he thought I said hair care. And so, right then, I knew that I'd kind of found my chief curator for the Curiosity Project. And then lastly, going back to the playbook of, how do you create impact, and, really, how do you try to break through on the web? There's so many different places you can go, and there's so much noise, and everybody has all these great ideas. We had to come up with what's the big idea that can satisfy curiosity. And so the way we thought about it is first, let's do the research and really try to think through what are the questions that really matter the most, and then take that same level of detail that went in to figure out what the questions were that mattered the most on trying to satisfy curiosity, and find the people who are qualified to answer those questions and convince them to come on board to the project and share their information and share their knowledge, whether they were a musician, whether they were a scientist, whether they were a teacher, whether they look for aliens in space, and get them to help us inspire people to learn. So the way the website works, in which it'll launch in about 45 days, is we started off with kind of this ambition of how do you build this massive database and fill it with all the questions of life that matter the most. And so we broke it down into categories, and we looked at everything from archaeology to zoology. And then we went on a mission to start to send out invitations to people all over the world, inviting them to participate. And we've been really fortunate that we've been able to get all kinds of experts, from Nobel Prize winners to Michael Dell to Martha Stewart to Buzz Aldrin to all these folks that have kind of been inspired about the idea that they could help in satisfying curiosity. And we've tried to do it by making the topics very relevant. How do we bring food from the farm to the table? Why do we wage war? And basically what the site becomes is kind of this heat bed for what people are truly curious for. And that's what drives the entire endeavor online. That's what's going to drive it in the classroom. That's what's going to drive it in physical retreats. And that's what's going to drive it over the next 5 years for all the television shows that we intend on creating on the subject. So when you come to the homepage acts somewhat as a wonder wall. And it's basically looking at what matters the most in the moment. What are people most curious about? So it might be a question such as what defines art? It might be Richard Branson as a person. It might be, is there intelligent life elsewhere? And if so, where? But at the heart of it is, what is curiosity? And when I click on what is curiosity, the site now turns into kind of this question-answer format that's somewhat of a collective IQ. Or a combined wisdom. So how do we get all these great minds to kind of conspire around a question? So if the question is what is curiosity, for Vin Cerf, his answer might be all centered around the origins of life. If I look at Rick Smolin, his might be how do I put a face to a topic? And when you think of the answers that we're aggregating, and I think we've got over 12,000 already from these different folks, think of them almost as like fishing poles that are in the sea of content on the web. And what we're looking for is life learners and introducing those life learners to experts that can help answer those questions. So if I was on the site and I could click on Vince's face, I could click on Rick's face, I could come down here and see a question about music and click on Wynton Marsalis's name. And then what happens is the site kind of turns into somewhat of a Facebook that's front-ended with all these questions and answers. So from here, Wynton Marsalis would have a profile page. It would be integrated with his Facebook account, his Twitter account. He could upload his videos from his sites, from YouTube. We could put his books into the site, and then we work with the authors and the publishers to convert the books to Q&As. Then we index that in search to help find users. He can upload his podcast. It shows what questions that he's answered recently, such as, what is jazz? And then right here in the middle is his activity feed. And the activity feed is the heartbeat of the site, similar to like the wall on Facebook. And so what we're trying to do here is use the site as a recommendation engine to create relevant pairings. And it could be expert to expert. So in this example, Wynton Marsalis has become a friend on the site with Rick Simolin. Or it could be introduced to the 50 million information seekers that are on the Discovery properties today looking for content that helps them satisfy curiosity. But what's going to be very different about this site is our commitment, as you would think Discovery would do, to make this extremely rich in video. And we're working really hard to find what the format is. How do we make a situation or an event like EG come to life onto the web in a way that, once again, feels like it's a time capsule that's breathing, constantly being added to. So if all these answers are going to be done in video, we're starting off the first year with what we call the Curious 250. So who are the 250 most curious people in the world? And then with the help of Richard Sergey and others, we're kind of traveling the planet with video crews to get answers to questions that people are telling us on the web that they need answers to. So for example, if the question was, how has the digital age impacted music to Wynton Marsalis, the format would look something like this.
Get more information out and get it in a system that allows it to spread much more quickly. Like, I can get on a computer and figure out, I can get 10 versions of the Pope Marcellus Mass of Palestrina. I can look for a Yorker poem, and then in an hour I can have that poem. Whereas before I would have had to go to a library, seek it out, see if it's not there, maybe wait a month. And also you can communicate with other people much quicker. But the interesting about technology and how we communicate through the technology, it's like a phenomenon of notes. You'll notice that in most instances, when there are a lot of notes being played, they're of much less value than when there are a few notes being played. That's not always true. But in general, it's a kind of a generalization that because there's so much communication, the quality of the communication sometimes suffers. So the act of communicating becomes more important than what is communicated. It's like a Lester Young solo. And Lester Young plays a few notes, but every note you say, So, yeah. I'm a fan of the technology. I feel like we invent things and it allows us to get more information. But what I'm less of a fan of is the technology defining who human beings are, because they're gadgets. Who the human being is underneath all of that. And I always think that Bach did not use the technology that was available to him to write his music. He could have used the keyboards, and he wrote his music out.
So this format we think is going to be extremely engaging. It's all about discovery within the website. If I was on Wynton's page and I noticed that he was friends with Vince Cerf or Vince Cerf, I could land on his page now. And from here, I could look at his activity feed. I could look at his recently answered questions. I could go up here and say, who is Vin become friends with within the site. I could see he's friends with Bob Metcalf, Dean Kamen, Steve Case. I could look at what groups he's tracking. It could be the New York Science Festival. It could be the Center for Strategic International Studies. Right now we're on this mission to get everybody from Stanford to NASA to come on board. I could click on his answers, and I could look at all the video answers that he's contributed to the site. And the way we do that is Connell, who's here with us today, basically looks at every individual and says, this is my opportunity to have dinner with this person. And what would be the 25 things that if I had 1 hour with this person that I'd have to get out of this conversation? So to Vin, it might be, how was the internet designed? Or should it have been designed differently? What will the internet be like 100 years from now? Or, what is social media's impact on society? And then when you come to this page, you can see that not only has Vin answered it, or you could read his answer, but more importantly, you see people like Richard Edelman, who've now joined the conversation. But what we're really trying to do is, through the rich media, is really capture the answer. And so here's another kind of quick soundbite from Vin Cerf talking about social media's impact on society.
First observation is that this isn't the first time that we've seen social interactions on the net. I would cite email in 1971 and 72 as the first manifestation of the use of the net for social interaction. Email distribution lists popped up almost as soon as networked email happened. So the first ones that I can remember were the sci-fi lovers distribution list, because these are mostly engineers that read science fiction. So they were sharing book reports with each other. And there was another one that Stanford started called Yum Yum, which is a list of restaurant reviews of, wherever the engineers happened to be, they would review the restaurant. So those distribution lists were examples of social interaction very, very early, even before internet, during the ARPANET period. So what you see now, I think, in the form of Facebook or MySpace or some of the other Orchid, are refinements of those social networking activities, where your speech is delivered conveniently to people that you are closely associated with, so friends of. And that's always been the case. I mean, if you think about the World Wide Web for a moment, when it began, it manifested in the form of web pages that if you found them, you might discover people of like mind who had common interests. You might be on a distribution list associated with that web page. You discover people that way, and then you form friendships, or at least partnerships or relationships. So this is not new, but I would say that its penetration into the population is dramatic, and that's a side effect of the penetration of internet itself. There are now over 2 billion people online.
So 2 billion people online. So I think you're starting to kind of get a feel for the scale of the site, the quality of content, our attempt to kind of inspire great thinkers from around the world to answer the questions that people are searching for online, where they're not really getting the great answers yet. And as you kind of go through the site, you can continue to dig deeper. If you wanted to go into social media, you could. If you wanted to go into music, if you clicked on the internet, it then becomes this kind of roll-up page around the topic. And it's all about popularity now. It's like, what's being favored, what's being shared, how does the world view the content that they're absorbing, and how can it kind of move through the web with the speed of light, realizing in today's world how important portability is. And so if I would click on John Hendrick's site, what I would say about John as kind of the founder of Discovery is his commitment not only to build the physical retreats for this, and his commitment to put all the dollars into building the television programming, is also to go into all the archives of Discovery, which mission from day one has been to satisfy curiosity and try to reinvent all that content online through here. And so in kind of ending, what we think of is kind of our role in all of this is, how do we become the humble host, right? And for me, it's very different, right? WebMD was about how do you build a brand and get people to come to your site. How Stuff Works was how do you make the complex simple? But again, our content come to our site. And what we're trying to do with the Curiosity Project is to be the humble host. How do we develop world-class technology that takes the best of Facebook, takes the best of Twitter, YouTube, and Wikipedia, and bring it to the hands of experts? How do we work to build world-class associations all over the globe so that all boats rise with the tide? And the hopes are, with the technology and with the association, is that we're going to inspire world-class storytelling that's then going to inspire people to learn. And kind of my job in all this is, I kind of think of it, it's kind of like working at a restaurant with a great chef. And that every night you get to taste a little bit of perfection and hope that you'll be able to taste the next creation. And so I thought I would end by debuting a couple more of these videos that Richard's been, kind of aggregating all together, and you guys kind of be the first ones to see them. And this is a formal invitation from us to you to be a part of the Curiosity Project, because you have such amazing things that you can add to this. And our goal is just to get that information into the hands of people who can truly benefit the most from it.
You were asked, what time would you want to be alive in the history of humanity? Would it be the invention of writing or the invention of fire? No, I would want to be alive right now in the 21st century when all the minds on the planet are being connected, when you have access to every piece of information you want.
You know, cyberspace matters for one reason above all other, and that is, in cyberspace, there's no distance between 2 points. And that creates huge opportunity, but also huge disruption. I mean, this is truly revolutionary stuff. This isn't warm, cuddly, fuzzy revolutions. This is the real stuff.
I maintain beyond a shadow of a doubt you can't possibly be innovative if you don't see any problems. And this harkens back to curiosity. If you're not curious, don't see anything wrong with anything you use or in your environment or home, how can you hope to be creative?
Well, jazz is about us. So if you have something that is about you and you don't want to listen to it, you have to ask yourself, why do you not want to listen to it? It's kind of like somebody that doesn't like to look at themselves in the mirror. Or every conversation, they never want it to be about how they feel about something. Or it's a national question that begs, that wants to be answered. Why is something about us not something that we feel is important for our kids to know about?
To me, the biggest challenge we face today is how are we going to provide food, energy, water, and shelter for all humankind without wrecking the planet. We're going to need some really good solutions that allow people to aspire to the economic standards that they want, to have a good life, but at the same time to ensure that we don't destroy the planet in the process.
The first thing we do when we get some new technology is we take an old thing that we did and we try to do it the same thing with the new technology. That's the wrong answer. People don't write emails the way they write letters. The new thing has to become its own thing in the new technology.
As we're more and more social in our media, are we getting more and more disconnected from real world and what's important? And I think that is a big question that we all have to wrestle with. And I do think the ultimate big question of why are we here is one that has been asked forever and will continue to be asked, and that's what makes us human. Trying to find our place in the cosmos and what this all means.
Thank you for your time.